Good afternoon, Houston. I'm KHOU 11 meteorologist Kim Castro here with your daily 10-minute weather update. We're going to be talking about the local forecast, storm chances this afternoon, the heat, the humidity, and of course, keeping an eye on the tropics, not just for the system that's in the Atlantic Basin expected to intensify into a hurricane, but a wave that we have in the Gulf that is likely to bring us at least some very much increased rain chances, a lot more moisture associated with that. You're going to notice I'm going to extend my arm here throughout the next 10 minutes, and that's because that clicker I usually have isn't working, so we're just going to use the good old-fashioned space bar. Okay, here's a look at the sea breeze, so bringing us some coastal showers from Freeport all along Matagorda, Brazoria, Galveston, and a portion of Chambers County too. Most of the shower activity in Baytown to Mont Belvieu is the strongest right now, so it does have some heavier downpours, some flashes of lightning, but otherwise inland, so a little closer to the I-10 corridor towards downtown, it's just humid and plenty hot. In fact, we're a little bit hotter than where we were yesterday. 93 degrees right now for the lunch hour is a 1-degree bump. But with the humidity, it feels like the triple digits. Feels like 101 degrees. The breeze out of the south-southwest at 7 miles an hour. That is a Gulf breeze, and it is bringing lots of us plenty of humidity. So here's a check at other temperatures across the area. Hobby Airport 91 degrees, Sugarland 93. In Sugarland, that 93 feels like 105. In Conroe, that's the cooler spot of the bunch, 90. Feels like the triple digits anyhow. Hour by hour forecast shows we're going to teeter between the upper 80s and 90s, and that's because we will have some periods of rainfall, which brings us rain-cooled air. Why does that happen? Well, as rain comes down from the clouds, it starts to evaporate, and evaporation is a cooling process. So it does momentarily cool down the atmosphere as we get those rain showers dropping down. So we do go from the low to mid 90s this early afternoon to some brief rain-cooled air in the 80s, and then we shoot up in between those storms, so we get peak heating of the day. I think our high temperature is still on track to make it up to 96 degrees, and for the rest of the evening we will be in the mid to upper 80s. So the high today 96, the storm chance 40%, temperatures staying consistent Friday into Saturday, but the rain is starting to increase. So we bump the rain potential up to 60%, and it's no coincidence. I'll talk about it here in a second, but here's the timeline of it all. So coastal showers right now fueled by the sea breeze start to bring us more widespread activity in Harris County by the time you are busy. Unfortunately, the timing is not great. So as you're running errands this late afternoon, as you're picking up the kids from school, as you're trying to commute back home from work, that's when I suspect you'll see some slowdowns, especially along I-10, the Katy Freeway, whether you're going towards the Energy Corridor or towards downtown. Both areas are going to see some on and off downpours. Now, Friday morning looks clear, but look at 2:30 in the afternoon. Now we're starting to see a big swath of moisture moving in, and I think this is going to be a much more stormy day. So the last couple of days, the certain areas that have gotten the thunderstorm activity certainly feel the disruption when those storms blow in, but a lot of spots have stayed rain-free. I think tomorrow you're going to have more to talk about with your neighbors that live in Huntsville or in Brenham or in Cypress or in Jersey Village. I think more of us are going to get in on the wet weather. That's going to continue until about 7 o'clock in the evening, and then things start to lift north towards Huntsville and into Livingston. And it's going to be a really similar pattern as we go into Saturday because the same source of moisture is still around. So this is the wave that we've been tracking the last couple of days. It's crossed through the Yucatan, now in the Bay of Campeche, still with a 20% chance of development. What does that mean? Well, it's got a low probability of gaining organization and tropical characteristics to qualify it as the next named storm. That doesn't mean it's not going to do anything if it doesn't get to that designation. The moisture is there, and we're going to see some impacts from it because it's right on our doorstep. So already the National Hurricane Center is flying hurricane hunters to this cluster of storms to get a good read on the center of it and the trajectory for it. And what they're finding with Invest 98L, that's the designation they've given it, is that it's going to focus most of its energy towards northern Mexico and southern Texas, so close to Brownsville. That's where most of the spaghetti plot models have the system tracking towards. Now, you might be thinking, okay, does that mean we are in the clear? Well, as you know, tropical systems have wraparound rain bands, and those are the ones that we're going to be watching for to increase our rain chances Friday into Saturday. And I will mention, we'll also see some other potential impacts, including higher rip current risks, choppy waves, just rough surf overall. So if you did have plans to head to Galveston this weekend, those plans might be disrupted, not just because of the increased rainfall, but because of the potentially hazardous waters. Tropical Future Track shows us this system is going to slowly inch again towards the north and west as we go throughout this afternoon and into Friday. So I'll stop the clock there Friday. So it's just offshore Brownsville. Now this is give or take, a couple 100 miles. So this could certainly shift a little bit further west and go right on top of Mexico and right on top of Brownsville. And that would be a better scenario for us because then it gets rained out there. But if it continues to track through open water for a little while longer, then that could sling in more moisture in our direction. So we'll keep an eye on that. We're certainly going to get stormy weather. That's a snapshot of your Saturday. So really similar to what I showed you on Future Track for Friday. Repeated rounds of heavy downpours, which will lead to some accumulation. So today's run-of-the-mill thunderstorm activity, not going to see a lot of accumulation. A few tenths of an inch of rain, half an inch widespread for the areas that see the moisture. That's likely. Now as we go into Friday, we could see a few areas get a few inches of rain. So this particular model giving Tomball that potential, and you'll notice that bright red spot, that could be an area closer to the loop. So in the Heights, maybe getting down to Memorial, that could see some 1 to 2 inches of rainfall, and that continues into Saturday. So Hawthorne Place, Jersey Village, basically anywhere in Harris County, we've got the potential of seeing a few inches of rainfall. Now, 2 inches wouldn't be that big of a deal, but once we start to exceed that, 3-4 inches in a short amount of time, that's when we do have to watch for high water spots. So today's time frame to monitor the commute home, 4 or 5 o'clock. I think that's when the rain peaks. Tomorrow, really similar time frame. Maybe we see a few earlier afternoon storms. You saw that on Future Track right around 2 o'clock, I think is when the stormy weather gets going. And then for Saturday, we could see those repeated rounds of rain on and off pretty much all day. So from noon all the way to your Saturday evening plan. So we'll take it one day at a time for now. Our excessive rain outlook looks like this. Today it's a 1 on the 1 to 4 scale. So it's the lowest threat, moderate, and this is mainly east of I-45. So if you commute home towards the refineries, or you're commuting from the refineries towards downtown, if you go up 5969 or the East Tex Freeway, that's where you might encounter a couple of issues this afternoon. Tropical moisture is going to make that an issue again for us tomorrow and Saturday. And I'm not surprised that things are starting to ramp up because we're approaching that September 10th bullseye time frame, which is when historically hurricane activity ramps up. That's the peak. And because of that, we are looking at what could be the first hurricane of the season. So here's your update on Tropical Storm Erin. It has gained some intensity between yesterday and today. So it now packs 60-mile-an-hour wind speeds, and by tomorrow is expected to become the first hurricane of the season. And it doesn't stop there. It continues to trek in the open Atlantic, gaining intensity, expected to become a major Category 3 hurricane. Now the hope is that it remains under this cone of uncertainty trajectory and grazes areas. Doesn't directly have impacts on Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, but instead just slushes out the coastal waters and creates rip current risk, which would be manageable. And then again, we'll have to keep an eye on that. Hopefully with this current trajectory, it's looking to curve north, so wouldn't have direct impacts on the eastern seaboard, but that is something that we'll have to keep an eye on over the next few days because that cone is only precise 1/3 of the time. So it can shift over the next few days. So just keep that in mind. 7-day forecast looks like this for us. Temperatures staying steady like they have been the last few weeks. So mid-90s for the most part, with on and off downpours today, and then increased shower activity Friday and Saturday because of that tropical moisture I'm monitoring in the Gulf. We'll just see remnants of that on Sunday, and then it's back to run-of-the-mill thunderstorms for next week, a 40% chance for that.